Hey, guys, it's DDD. All right, I'm going to get straight into it, please, because this is going to be the last part. This is the first podcast I've done where it's a 3-parter. So now I just feel like this is being dragged out. So let's just try to sum this shit up, right? So like I said, we had the house party, right? That shit was all good for the most part, whatever. Interactions was friendly. Didn't really feel like no shady energy was going on. Like, it was just cool. So after that, I'm thinking that, him and I is cool. We good. And I felt like it was that way for a minute. But eventually, the problem became that, he has a relationship with another man named Hassan. And it's a toxic relationship, to make a long story short. You get what I'm saying? Like, as far as the deets and the ins and outs of who's wrong and, what their specific issues are, like, I don't really give a fuck about all that. But what I do know is it's clear to me that Robert is the aggressor in their quarrels. You get what I'm saying? Whether they're arguing, fighting, I always hear him being the aggressor. He's always the louder voice. He's always the angrier person. And whenever I hear physical abuse, it's always clear that he's the one doing the abusing. And it's Hassan who's the victim, because he's crying and he's begging Robert to stop putting his hands on him and all of that. Now, the abuse, I think, I don't know how bad he was abusing that man, because I would hear that man up there make weird noises. Like, I would hear things crashing and banging all around that unit. Like, it was bad. And I mean, I guess you can't really hear someone punching someone, but I would just hear all of the noises and the reactions that his boyfriend would have. And I would just hear him scream and whimper and yell, while I would hear things shatter and break and be thrown around. And then, there was times where I would hear him say, ow, and ow. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing to him? And it even got to the point where, like, I think he basically disabled this man, because now he walks around. He did not always look like that. He walks around with his head like bobbled and dangling down. And then I also see, like, there's times where I've seen him walk down the flight of steps and he's like shaking as he's walking. And I'm like, he fucked you up in some way. Like, I don't know if he gave you a nerve condition. Like, I don't know if he fucked your neck up in some way. And other people have commented on this as well. It's like they've noticed the downgrade in his boyfriend's appearance over the years. And it's like, you're not going to convince me that none of that came from you abusing him. Like, I even heard gagging noises, like you were choking him or something. And I had one of his exes, his most recent ex, prior to the person he's with now, basically inform me that at one point he had physically strangled him. So this is something that clearly, you've done before, or that, you're not above doing. So that right there, just exposed another side of him. Like, okay, you're dark, you're evil, you're abusive. I don't give a fuck who tries to normalize toxicity and abuse in relationships, especially in urban environments. I'm going to always feel like it's disgusting and something that is repulsive to me. Right? So, that was another major issue. You're fighting with this man on a daily basis, and, you're causing all sorts of noises and disturbances. You don't give a fuck about how it's disturbing me. You're yelling, like I said, throwing shit all around your home, which is going to disturb me, because you're slamming things down on the ground. You're stomping. Now you're blasting music while you're arguing with him. Like, it just used to be a lot of crazy shit. So, that was an issue. The music, like I said, also was an issue, because then, he would have this like surround sound, bass heavy stereo that he would just blast over my head at any given time. And it's like he would play it for hours sometimes. So it would just make things uncomfortable down here because it's like, well, now I can't play my music the way I want to because you're blasting yours over mine. And it was just crazy. Like, I felt like at a certain point he was purposely antagonizing me. Like, it's just so much. I feel like I could go on and on, but now I feel like because I only got so much time, I want to get into the court shit when shit got real. So when I eventually got tired of his shit, and it got to the point where, I had to stop speaking to him. Like, I had to take my power back because I felt like I was still trying to coexist and be cordial. But once I felt like, he was deliberately disturbing me and had no regard for how, like, it made me feel, I had to get to the point where it was just like, okay, like, I'm not speaking to you no more. Like, I'm not fucking with you because you don't have no regard for how you're disturbing me. Like, it's crazy. And no, I didn't have another conversation with him after the first one. I felt like there was no need for another conversation because I already spoke to you the first time. So you already knew that I had a problem with you being noisy over my head, right? Like, I just feel like that should have been clear. That should have been common sense. So it's like, once it became a reoccurring and consistent issue, I was just over it. Like, one thing about me, I don't have time to play with adults. You know what I'm saying? Like, you a grown ass man, you older than me. Like, you should already have enough common sense to know that you're disturbing me. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you that or even talk to you about that, I feel like. Like, loud music, regular shit like that, normal shit, yeah, that's something that may need to be addressed. You acting like an asshole because you can't control yourself mentally or emotionally, that's another issue. And these were also the confirmations to me that he had mental health issues because I'm like, look at how you're handling your relationship and how aggressive and angry you are and get. Like, there were literally times where he would yell at that man to die at the top of his lungs. Like, it was crazy. So, like I said, I eventually got tired of his shit. Like, 2021, I started reporting his disturbances to our rent office, right? And at first I thought, maybe I was going to be able to solve something there, but I should have known that really nothing was going to get solved because the neighbors that I had prior to him were just as disturbing. Actually, he took the cake. He was more disturbing than them, but they were basically just the same amount as disturbing as well. And they didn't do a good job of handling that issue. Like, they forced me to take it to court, which is what I also had to do with this asshole. So, they end up telling me I have to take him to court because of all these technicalities that, I'm making claims against him that technically can't be proven. I'm claiming he's making noise. But their whole thing was, yeah, you're coming to us, you're complaining, but we can't just put him out because you're claiming that he's making noise. Like, this needs to be proven, like all this bullshit about the gray areas of law. So they're like, you need to handle it in court. So I've literally been taking this nigga to court for over a year now for like 4 different fucking cases. Because the first case I put on him, it was like he didn't show up to court like 2 or 3 fucking times. He eventually got a warrant. I got him arrested. And then he ended up pleading guilty to all of my claims and had to pay a disorderly petty person's fine, which, okay. But he pled guilty, had to pay a fine. Second time we had a court situation, I believe he didn't show up for any of the dates. So they ended up having to issue him another warning. He got arrested again. This time, this was last year on Christmas Eve. Like, imagine getting arrested on such a day. So, gets arrested again. I don't really know what happened with that case. I don't know if that ever really got settled properly. But I just know that ended up in a situation where he had got another warrant and then he had to be arrested for that. And that's where he had to suffer. So, the third case, I remember he showed up for, and he also pled guilty to that one. So that was his second time pleading guilty with the third complaint that I signed, right? So he had to pay another fine for that. That one was like $408. The first one he had to pay $374. Second one he had to pay $408, and then told the judge he had to get on a payment plan to pay it. So now we're on our 4th case. But what I find so funny is now he has finally just recently been evicted because I don't know if it was for non-payment of rent. I don't know if he had some other shit going on. For all I know, it could have had something to do with me because of my reoccurring issues with him and me documenting it with everyone. So, whatever reason, I just know he got kicked out. But even that was a journey, child. Like, he had a warrant of removal, and I thought I had all the reason in the world to celebrate, child. He got put out, but I guess it was a technical matter where he still had 30 days to pay the rent all off and potentially save his home. Well, guess what he did that fucked him over in the meantime? When he had his warrant of removal, he was supposed to be gone from the property until his next court date, where they could have potentially figured out a deal to work or not work out with him, right? It was still all up in the air. My property manager informed me to let her know if I heard anyone up there in that unit during the time, because they weren't supposed to be up there. And sure enough, he got desperate. You know, he couldn't deal with being on the streets in the cold. He got desperate and climbed the fire escape and came into the unit when he knew he didn't belong. And I guess he thought because he still had rights, or because he knew he could still fight to technically keep the place, he thought he could just do that and it wouldn't be nothing. He even tried to be up there and be quiet and walk around. No, honey, as soon as I noticed that there was someone up there walking around, oh, I called them police, honey. I was on top of it. Yeah, you got to go, sir. And I made sure I documented it with them. And then I turned right around and yes, honey, he told our rental office. So he ended up having to leave the second time I called the cops, I think because he couldn't prove that he had the right to stay there. So then he got really upset at that, right? And he was walking from our rental office the next day, and he was so angry, like walking across the street, popping so much shit with papers in his hands. And I had a feeling that I'm like, I don't know if he's getting ready to try to come back here or what all that's given, but he did end up coming back here and he was talking hella shit, shaking his ass, twerking. He just thought he was so cute. Aha, bitch. I got back in my home. Da, 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 da. Oh, okay. But I already knew what was going on. I said, mind you, I got the call. That's why I said he didn't even realize what was going on in the background. I got the call from the property manager that told me what was going on. And she said that basically he just applied for 7 more days to stay until his next court date. So he didn't know that I knew his business. And he was trying to do all that talking shit and celebrating in the background. You didn't win the war yet. So how about his court date came up on the 12th and baby, yeah, they determined your eviction. Because our property manager told me to tell her, like, give her the dates and the times that he was there. And I did just that. And I'm pretty sure they brought that up in court because by you violating your warrant of removal, that gives Carver Hall the right to not work out any deal with you. Like, you're breaking the law, sir. So, you know, checkmate. You get what I'm saying? Like, he spent all that time trying to purposely antagonize me. And this is what I've really been saying. It's like the whole time he was playing checkers, you know, a child's game, a kiddie game, I was playing a grown man's game. I was playing chess. You know, you was doing a lot of petty shit trying to be smart with the loud music and the disturbing noise, the company, the unnecessary drama. And then, you know, you was popping a lot of shit behind it. You know, you was rapping those female rap songs. You was filling your bus. But, honey, when it really came down to legal shit, paperwork, handling shit, it was me doing the big work on the end. And then imagine, today's his birthday. You got put out 2 days before your birthday. So I'm glad I recorded this today because, you know, God is good. And I feel like this was a situation to show how God doesn't like ugly. And, you know, situations like this are very validating for me because I may not have the closest relationship to God. I'll be honest. I don't pray every day. I'm not super in tune with all of that. But I believe God knows my heart and he knows that I'm a good person. And I know that's so cliche, but no, I really mean that. Like, I mind my business for the most part. I don't bother people. And that man was evil. So I'm glad that God handled him accordingly. And Happy birthday, bitch. This podcast is for you. So thank you to anyone and everyone who listens. And just remember to be good to people so that good can return to you. Have a good day.